everybody. Ladies, welcome to another incredible interview in our Shine Pod. I'm Shauna, your holistic nutritionist, and this is Charlotte, your holistic intuitive mindset coach. And we are in the month of December where we've been highlighting and having conversations and getting informed and educating ourselves and being empowered in all things conscious consumerism.
Yes.
And we are so pumped and excited to have Mr. Damon Gameau. How are you today, Damon?
I am very well. Thank you for having me, and look forward to what will probably be the last conversation of 2019 for me that involves any talk about 2040.
Well, we are so blessed.
Wow.
So Damon is an award-winning documentary director of now 2 Australian films. He's got a background in acting and directed that Sugar film, which was put out how many years ago now, Damon? Was that about 6 years ago?
Yeah, not quite. 2015. So yeah, just 4 years.
Oh, four years, probably in the making for five years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And just the recently amazing documentary called 2040. So welcome, and again, thank you for giving us your time. So yes. Charlotte, do you want to just let Damon know who we are and what we do and what we're about?
Certainly. So we have a community of about 600 women that follow Shine Mind Body Spirit, and we're about educating, inspiring, informing and empowering women in all aspects of well-being. And so bringing you on board, Damon, I love the aspect of 2040 is about the well-being of our planet and how we're connected to our planet and how that filtrates to all of us in our well-being, in our mind and our bodies. So more about that film, that documentary, and the impact that it's having on communities around Australia and the world, in fact. So yeah.
I'd like to start actually being involved in that Sugar film. I know that there was a key element in that film of coming to understand for many of us of how broken the food system was and how the current ways in which we globally manage the food system is unsustainable and is believed to not be sustained past 2045, 2050 in its current production. Was it a natural progression from what you observed and learnt through your research and travels and discussions in that Sugar film into the idea and concept of a film that kind of went into an environmental context?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely very strong parallels. I think that the learnings I took from Sugar were, I guess, around how, like you said, how deeply broken the system is at a very fundamental level. The level of vested interest that pollutes the information environment that affects people. And I certainly saw really strong correlations with that, with what's happening with the planet. We have a system that isn't serving us. It's ultimately a very competitive and rivalrous system that actually pushes to the top of that system people and types of people that don't necessarily have all of our best interests at heart. They get rewarded for being very good at competition and rivalry. So I guess for me, it was how do we, seeing all the different effects that this system is currently having, whether it's on our own health, whether it's on the planet's health, whether it's on pollution, that really this 2040 is about us starting to think about what the new system might look like. And it's something that I think needs to be more symbiotic and interconnected. Otherwise, we're not going to get through that. And that's a big topic to start with. But I think what I found is that there are just so many people that are protecting their own interests, protecting, as we know, their financial interests, and that is having a deleterious effect on lots of different things. So I guess ultimately I saw how powerful film can be with that Sugar film. We just had such a great response at a community level, in a political level in terms of how it changed certain policy in some countries, and just, the day-to-day people on the street that would stop me and say what impact it had. I just wanted to tell the next story and use all the learnings from that process to not only make a film, but sort of develop a bit of an outreach campaign off the back of the film where people could directly take action and get involved. So I thought that was the thing that was missing in this climate space, was that it's really hard to connect with it. Our scientists do a great job, but they don't talk in a language that engages the soul and the heart. They talk in, anthropogenic and negative emissions and 2 degrees warming, and it's very hard for people to make sense of that. So I wanted to distill that information, but then also talk about this issue at a very deep heart human level, which I think's been missing, and then allow people to transmute all that anxiety or fear they have around the future and their children and whatnot, and actually give them tangible ways to get involved and take action. And certainly, which we can discuss later, that's been the best thing of this whole process, is seeing how people are willing to give their time, money, to build some of the solutions we've shown in the film. And they've actually brought them to life. So a lot of the things that were on the screen are now happening in real time, purely from people's passion and engagement. So I feel very excited by that, and think that this is a space I'm going to stay in for the rest of my life, and probably this topic as well, and just keep growing that platform, trying to give people entry points as to how they can actually alleviate their anxiety by moving forward with action.
Yes,
brilliant.
Wonderful. There was actually, can you tell us the little story that you have about how you came about the very unique narrative that you've used in 2040 about it being solution-based? I think I had listened to another interview where you had a light bulb moment reading a cataclysmic newspaper article or something along those lines.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of parents will probably relate to this, that it's hard to get through to the end of some of this, the constant narrative that we're getting around the future, especially if you've got children that I found myself just disengaging. It's like, what can I do with that? I hear that, the methane's being emitted in the permafrost and it's increasing, accelerating the warming, or you hear how much ice is, and you hear another species has gone extinct. Because there's nothing tangible to do about that, it's an existential issue, so it's very easy to disengage. And in part of the research, I did speak to an environmental psychologist, which we're about to do an interview with on our channels as well. And she just talked to me about the psychology of that when we are, as humans, only hearing information that comes with fear and overwhelm, that it activates this part of our brain. And when that limbic system that gets activated is activated, it shuts down parts of our brain where we think creatively and we problem solve. So that was a bit of a light bulb moment for me. And then I found a quote by a writer, a novelist named Raymond Williams, and he said that to be truly radical is to make hope possible rather than despair convincing. And I just realised that that's all we've been doing. We've just been banging people over the head saying how bad it is, and that's really important. I don't want to shy away from that at all, because we are absolutely in a crisis. But as a way of motivating people and bringing them into engagement, we've got to talk solutions. We've got to inspire them by showing what people are doing, because otherwise I think we're going to see more of what's already happening is people retreat into fear. They'll vote for authoritarian leaders. They'll build up their own walls and protect themselves because they don't want refugees coming in that are affected in other countries. And that's a very dangerous place to get into. So I think we're at a very interesting fork in the road about how we go with this topic. And I feel very passionately about trying to bring people along by inspiring them as opposed to scaring the bejesus out of them.
Yeah. And it is a very clever way to inspire communities that sit and watch it, especially kind of younger generations that are inspirators,
influenced,
and motivated in a different way than perhaps we were as a generation. And it's a very unique flavour in your film, and we really love that.
It feels hopeful. Yeah. I certainly felt hopeful after watching it, Damon.
Yeah, so, and even particularly the context in, and maybe you can talk to this a little bit more, in that the capacity to be able to do something actively that creates change quickly, because there are many of us that are, the doom and gloom, it's too hard, it's too big, it's way beyond me. And it was a very clear message when you're standing in the field with the farmer that you have in the documentary, and I think it was a 3-month cycle of change that was so apparent in the soil, and how quickly
we forget that nature is extraordinary, and when we give it the opportunity, it will regenerate in such mind-blowing ways. And sometimes we just have to give it a little nudge, but sometimes we just have to get out of the way. We just have to, it's that great metaphor when you're paddling the canoe up the stream. Sometimes you just have to stop paddling and the canoe will turn itself around and actually go downstream again.
Yeah.
So I think that's been a great thing to take away. And also that I think that it's, as we've discussed, the most important way to deal with any anxiety is to actually move forward. And it's like if you went to the doctor, and this is a good analogy, that you've always been hearing from the doctor is, you're really sick, you're going to die soon, it's getting closer. You go the next day, he says, you're still sick, you're even worse now, here's a pamphlet, take home and read about it. At some point, you're going to say to that doctor, that's really good, but you need to tell me what I can do about it. Give me things to move. I want to do some experimental this and smoke this and drip this on me and go to the jungle and do this, whatever it might be. Give me a suite of things that I can actually get involved with, which will help me move forward with this problem. So if we think of that as the planet going to the doctor, that's kind of what's been going on with just getting the diagnosis. And at some point, all of us just disengage from that. So I'm convinced that this is the way forward, not to be Pollyanna about it or be utopian and say, hey, it's all going to be great. We've still got to sit with the reality of what's going on. And that's an important emotional element too. I think the more people can actually honor that part of them that goes, I am terrified, I'm a parent who's really scared, allow yourself to feel the depths of that, you'll then free up that space to actually create room for solutions and to move forward. So I think a lot of people are also paralyzed because they're not willing to accept the dire state of what we're actually in. So once you do that, then off you go and unleash and join all the other people that are moving forward.
Yeah.
Which you said is happening a lot behind the scenes. So the media is focusing on what's negative at the moment, but behind the scenes, there's a lot of work happening right now.
Yeah, which you've highlighted in
Broadway.
So do you want to talk do you want to talk to us about the 5 main kind of, was there 5 main solution kind of platforms that you highlighted in the film?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was tough to sort of distill them, but I sort of categorized them as key pillars around energy, transport, agriculture, the oceans, educating and empowering girls, and then resources or the economy. And it's sort of, the film is framed within, because none of these things are silver bullets. I think we have to understand that there's no band-aid solution for what's going on ecologically. We have a deep systemic flaw that's causing all these problems. So the film is centered around the work of a beautiful woman named Kate Raworth, who's an Oxford trained economist, who's basically just set up a proposal of how a new economic structure could work. And it just sort of allows us to still do a lot of the things we're doing, but stay within certain boundaries that don't lead to our demise. So whether they're ecological boundaries, which is like too much land clearing, too much chemical on our food, ocean acidification, climate change, they're the ecological ones. But then also that we maintain within the social boundaries, which are levels of income inequality, which are rivaling the aristocracy right now and causing all sorts of problems, gender equality, all these sort of issues on the inside. So if we can stay in that sweet spot of what she calls the donut, that's where we're going to move forward. So that sort of film is framed by that.
Very well illustrated in the film too. Very, very well illustrated and very easy to understand.
Yeah. Which took a long time to get right, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
Even trying to distill the future into 92 minutes was a real challenge. But the things we looked for were really like any solution had to, like I said before, have this sort of sense of a more symbiotic and interconnected relationship, but also that it had to have cascading benefits. So, for example, the microgrids, the decentralizing of energy in Bangladesh, not only is that obviously lowering emissions because we're using solar energy, but it's keeping all the money within the economy. So people get to buy and sell their energy. That money's not going to a corporation somewhere else. So there's, again, multiple benefits which then help the community. Regenerative agriculture, again, is that wonderful cascading benefit that we put the carbon from the atmosphere where it's doing us damage, put it back in the soil. As soon as you start increasing it in the soil, the water retention increases, so it almost acts like a sponge, plus the quality of our food starts to improve, the nutrient levels and all the life and the incredible amount of microbes in the soil starts to come alive, and that gets passed on to our food, which benefits our own microbiome. So no brainer. Let's just do that anyway. What a great thing to do. But we're also dealing with climate change. So that was a really big part of finding the solutions that, even for people that have, lots of people are screening the film that are even dubious on climate change, don't even think it, might be happening, but they relate to all of the solutions anyway, because we need to do them. We've got 60 years of topsoil left, according to the UN, so we've got to get that carbon back in the soil. So lots of farmers in Australia or even in the US are starting to put that carbon back in their soil purely to increase their yields and the quality of their food and save their farms. They don't care about climate, but they're actually inadvertently helping anyway. So that was I spent 8 months with a researcher before we filmed anything and spoke to about 70 or 80 different academics just to try and work out what the best solutions were going to be before we even, told the story. So it's been a huge process over the last 4 years involving some really sensational people. And like I said, when you're hanging around that kind of content and those type of people for 4 years, it's hard not to feel some sense of hope return because, we're just not sharing their stories. And it's not just the people we've worked on. There is so much going on around the world that's just wonderful. Yeah. But our mainstream narrative is just not covering any of it.
Yeah. That brings me to a question, Damon, from one of our viewers, from Carrie Brewer. And her question is, out of all the countries you visited while filming 2040, which one is doing the most or taking the most action now collectively to create a sustainable future for its children?
Great question. So unfortunately, Australia is about the bottom, which was probably the toughest part of making this film, was just seeing how far behind the rest of the world we are. There are so many countries doing amazing things. I mean, Costa Rica is just way ahead in terms of, single-use plastic being banned, reforestation programs, being carbon neutral. Like, it's just, if anyone wants to look at some of their food systems, it's incredible. And then the obvious ones are the Northern European countries like the Sweden and those sort of Nordic places. They're doing things like, their government incentivizes people to have electric cars. So they give free parking, free toll roads in the city. They take all the taxes off them. Nearly all the taxis are Teslas. Whereas in Australia, we put a luxury car tax on our electric vehicles, so no one buys them. There's just, and their recycling model, their food waste, what they're doing with those kind of materials is just, so far ahead of us. But it's important to know that it's happening, that people are doing it. But I would say probably those countries. And then, lots of little examples of terrific solutions amongst countries. But as a broader perspective, I'd say some of those Northern European ones.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions?
Yes.
We had a lady in from Tassie who has not yet seen your film, but must have seen an interview or something about the Seaweed marine generation that's happening down in Tassie. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so for people who don't know, it's probably one of the more extraordinary solutions in the film. That seaweed is the fastest growing organism in the world. So it can grow, the giant kelps can grow up to 50 centimetres a day, so half a metre a day, and up to 50 metres long. And so when they do that, they are just pulling carbon out of the atmosphere really, really quickly. And then they also provide a habitat for the fish to lay their eggs. So, we're really badly overfishing our oceans, and a lot of them are on the brink of collapse. So this allows the fish to kind of come back again. It also alkalizes the water. The seaweed itself can be used for a range of different things, from bioplastics to feeding to cattle to lower their methane emission. So we've met quite a few scientists now that are looking at planting these giant kelp forests out at sea. Because again, so much of the ocean we're not using properly. We could actually, instead of using land and cutting down more forests, we could start planting giant kelp forests out at sea that would be pulling down that carbon and providing these incredible ecosystems. So the problem is that about 90% of the excess heat from global warming is going into the ocean. So our oceans just do an incredible amount of the heavy lifting for us. But it means that a lot of the oceans have become depleted on nutrients. They've become almost ocean deserts. And a lot of the kelp has been wiped out. So in Tasmania, down the east coast, they've lost 95% of their kelp because of the warming ocean. So we did a crowdfund off the back of the film with Intrepid Foundation and raised $600,000 to work with the University of Tasmania. And I was down there 2 days ago, and they've just been growing all these little baby kelps in about 400 different little, in their laboratory, just to test if some of them, the best, like the super kelps, can be resilient to the warmer waters. And they've found that a lot of them can. So they've grown those, and now we've just started planting them out in Storm Bay in the ocean to test how they go. And they're already up to 20 centimetres long. They've grown really, really quickly. It's a great story. So the plan is to then build over the next sort of year to 18 months, the first sort of small scale platform. So we build, probably 10 by 10 metre platform, and then start this process. And then if it goes well, bring in all the impact investors and all the other ocean engineers and say, how do we scale this up so we've just got millions of hectares of these kelp forests out at sea, and make sure that there's not any side effect or it's not doing any damage anywhere else. But it's incredibly exciting, and to think that happened just from ostensibly our community watching the film. I had kids at school screenings giving me $5 of their lunch money saying, can you put this to the Seaweed project? So it's just a beautiful story and shows what we can do. We don't have to keep yelling and screaming.
It really does bring in just like immediate hope, immediate joy, like immediate outcome from action, and so hopefully those that see any of the work of 2040 are inspired to, make change.
And you innovate.
Because I think we can, yeah, that's right. We've only just begun, really. And I think, especially at the moment when there is, people are spending so much of their energy and anger at our leaders and Scott Morrison and whatnot. And it's important. We need to speak truth to power, but we also need to understand that so much of that energy can be channeled into things like this. And we could just achieve so many wonderful things if we give people enough outlets for them to get involved and align their various passions. It might not be seaweed. It might be food. It might be energy. It might be farming, whatever it is.
Yeah.
If we just keep offering those ways up and just coax people to come on and start joining this sort of movement of positivity and moving forward, then, what we can achieve is limitless.
Yeah,
but it's just
it's the movement up from the bottom down approach, isn't it? Because I think sometimes we get lost in the top down approach is where it all has to, like we're kind of conditioned.
We're waiting for somebody to take action, whereas we can take action.
Yeah, we're conditioned to believe in the culture that we live in, that everything is governed by this top down approach. Yet the bottom up approach is actually far more powerful than
that's how it's always happened through. That's how it's always happened. Whether it's abolishing slavery, whether it's the suffrage, the women's vote, whether it's human rights movement, it was never led by a politician or a president in power. It was people sort of making their voices heard. And I think that's what we're seeing right now. And I've certainly seen the impact, even at corporation levels, where really massive companies are changing because they're saying we actually can't employ these kids out of universities anymore because they don't want to work for a company that's destroying their future. So they're actually changing because of the pressure that's coming up from below. So it's really important for people to hold on to that and for them to know that this is the time to find their agency, whether it's at your school, whether it's even in your own workplace. If there's just something you can do to make a small change, it will make a difference because we're such social animals that we send these little triggers and cues about what is accepted socially to each other that when they start to grow, we just change what we value. And it's really, you're seeing it happen with keep cups. We see it happen with all sorts of different things, but we just got to keep going. The more we talk about these issues and show that we are going to make change, we actually give people permission to do the same and join us.
Brilliant.
Yeah, find your agency. I love that.
Yeah. So it brings me to the question, Damon, in regards to educating girls around the world as one of the key topics in a solution. Yeah. Could you talk a little bit more about that for us?
And we're super passionate about this because that's actually our agency. That's kind of where we're we're taking Shine into schools next year because the work we've been doing with women in the community is like, preventative healthcare starts. We've got to kind of tap into the
younger generation,
into the young girls. So so even though it's in Australia and it's focused on well-being, the intent is in vein with that. So we'd love, because that was a surprising aspect of 2040 when you were doing your work.
Oh, it was a massive one for me. And since, the amount of academics or people that have seen the film around the world that have said that, it's just so great that you got that out there because it is one of the, if not the most important thing we can do. And the statistics say that there's about 120 million girls now around the world that don't get to complete their education. And that's just not in developing countries. That's also in wealthier nations. And if a girl isn't able to complete her education, and it's often for a variety of reasons, whether it's religious or they're taken out to work in certain countries, then they have about 5 or more children if they don't get to finish education. But if they are able to finish their education, they get access to reproductive health services, they get legitimate work opportunities. They then get to choose when and how many children they have. And that number comes down to 2. So the difference between 5 or more and 2 means that by 2050, according to the UN, that's a difference of 1.1 billion people.
Wow.
So that's a huge impact. I mean, let's empower girls and women anyway. What a great thing to do to transform society. That's what we need to do. But then the bonus and the icing on the cake is that 1.1 billion people not using resources, not contributing to climate change is enormous. So it's just one of those solutions that's like, okay, come on, let's just do it. And I'm pleased to say that even yesterday I was reading a report that I was doing a summary of all the good things that happened this year. And there have been billions of dollars this year alone that have gone into girls' education and reproductive rights right around the world. So this message is getting out. People are starting to really understand the importance of that. And, you know, it's wonderful.
Wonderful. Absolutely.
And congratulations on being a new dad to another daughter.
Yes.
Well, I've got 2 of them myself, so I will be doing all I can to empower them.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's great.
What else do we want to chat about?
We could chat all day, but we respect your time.
Yes. Yeah. Anything else that you want to impart to us and our community, Damon? Anything up and coming that we need to keep our eyes out for? In actual fact, can you give us some take-home messages? What can we do in our small but big lives? You know, small, what's that saying? Big
Small
things grow from little
hinges.
things.
Yeah.
I know that you've got a bevy of resources. You've got your what's your 2040? Is that right?
Yeah, I'd say that's probably the best thing to do, because I think what's happened, especially environmentally, is that we've fallen into a trap of being quite prescriptive with what we tell people to do. And we say, you know, eat less meat and, you know, ride your bike to work. But not everyone's going to connect with that. We've all got different interests, as we know. So we set up this platform at the website, whatsyour2040.com, and there's a button there that says activate your plan. And basically we ask you some questions about the type of person you are and how much time you have available, what your passions are. And then we'll give you 6 or 7 things to do based on that input. And we've worked with about 50 different organisations around the world so that you can really make really great changes at your school, at work, at home, and just find out a way that you can get involved. So just I'd recommend anyone to find that thing that they particularly connect with and then go for it. If we just keep asking people to do things they're not aligned with, we're not going to get very far. And my favourite quote is by this Arctic explorer named Robert Swan. And he says that the greatest threat to the planet is the belief that someone else will save it. And I think that's what we were talking about before, is that it's up to us. We're not going to get it from Morrison. We're not going to get it from all these world leaders. It's just not going to happen. We can't spend too much time with that. We've just got to roll up our sleeves and get it done, come together as communities and actually show them how to do it.
Yeah, awesome. And I love that impetus in both of your films, and particularly in 2040, is gathering community. And it's not the sort of film, I mean, there are plenty of people obviously that will only get the opportunity to watch it in their lounge room, but if you get to have an opportunity to watch it in a community setting, it's quite a powerful way to soak in the message. And hopefully we are all advocates and take 2040 into our communities, which I'm gathering is an option for us to do into 2020.
Yeah, people can take it. Now they can. Anyone that wants to can do their own screening. We've had 170 community screenings in the last 3 months, including 30 councils in Australia, which is just amazing. And it's now happening right through the UK. We've had 500 schools do their screenings, 14,500 downloads of the free lesson plan. So teachers, there's 31 free lesson plans based on all the concepts in the film. So look, there's no excuse not to get involved, really. It's it's all there.
Yeah, and any woman watching this, you know, take the resources that Damon and his team have curated and particularly researched and produced. Take them to your school and get the kids involved.
Because the kids love it. It's like every time we do a school screening, it's like a rock concert. They just absolutely love it because they're sick of being taught, you know, if we don't fix this problem, it's going to be gone in 50 years. Or they want to know what their jobs are of the future. What are their exciting careers? How can they help to regenerate the planet? So we've just got to show them, get them inspired by their careers of the future. So, I'd encourage anyone. The film is a very simple. It's a very simple entry point into some of this stuff. It's not doomsday. It's not overwhelming. It's just sort of that sort of gentle Trojan horse into a much larger issue. And often, as you discovered, it just kickstarts a really good conversation.
Yeah, and thank you for making this subject really inspiring and exciting. You know, like I feel excited.
I'm excited. I'm actually feeling quite excited.
Well, we should be. There's a lot of work to do, but there's, you know, that's the thing. If we reframe this as an opportunity, It's again, if you go to the doctor and he says, do you want to keep living like this? Because if you do, you're going to be miserable. But if you get off the ciggies, if you start eating healthy food, you can actually have a beautiful, different life. And that's the same analogy here. We have an opportunity to fundamentally change the way we interact with each other and the planet. I mean, what a time to be alive if we can pull it off. And that's what I want to do. I want to spend the rest of my days trying to make that happen. Even if we don't do it, what a great way to spend the rest of your life anyway. So get involved.
We are getting involved.
Get involved and get connected to nature and to each other and kind of what really matters at the end of the day. We are extremely grateful for your time, Damon, and we feel blessed to be in your presence. And we look forward to observing and witnessing all the work that you bring into our worlds and the hope and inspiration that follows. So thank you.
Thank you. And congrats on the work you're doing, because it's, what you're doing is of equal importance, and we're all in this together, and we can help each other in any way possible. So I wish you all the best. And Shauna, please send me any information if we can promote or help or share. We'd love to get it out there.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
Love that. Damon. Thanks, Damon, and love to the family.
Love to the family.
Have a good break.
Have a great break.
See
See ya.
ya.
Bye.
Bye.